Hello everybody, Steven here with Cardboard Coalition, and today I figured I would bring you a solo playthrough of Osprey Games Imperium Classics. Now, I would say the player count, but we're doing the one player count because we're doing the solo playthrough, right? But it does play up to 4, so we'll give you that. And it says it's an hour to an hour and a half long game, if I remember correctly. It might have said 40 minutes, but it's usually about an hour to an hour and a half long game. So as I said, this is the setup for a solo play. So if you watched my previous video, I talked about how to play this game with multiple people and set it up as a 2-player game. So this is the solo play. I'm going to go over quickly some of the things you set up that are normal to the 2-player or 4-player game, and then talk about the bot setup and then go through how everything plays. Now, so for the setup, you set up a solo game like you would set up a 2-player game. This means from the region deck, you draw 6 cards and you put them up there. You take 1 card, put it down. You do the same with the uncivilized and civilized. And then all your extra leftover cards go over here and they go into the main market deck. And you take 2 cards from there and set them down, which represent the main market deck. Then you go back. I realized I missed one thing. Got to do that. Then you go back and you take unrest cards and you put them under certain ones. And in the setup it tells you this, but I've done it enough times to know that any tributary card with that blue with the flag, any civilized is gray with the pillar, or any uncivilized, this has an uncivilized and civilized card, but uncivilized is green with the leaf in the middle. All those get an unrest card put underneath. And if a player or the bot acquires one of those cards, they take that unrest. And those are cards that just clog up your hand. Now, since we're talking about unrest, I want to correct something that I messed up in the video of the how to play. It's a small mess up, but in some ways kind of big. We'll let you decide. So there's 2 end mechanics. There is scoring end. That means someone does something to hit the end game. These cards run out, the King of King gets flipped over, and I know it's hard to see, this is kind of a table hog. These cards run out, or there's certain different things that happen with different groups, like the Arthurians, the Vikings. And then also, if someone completely builds their nation up. Now I can't remember the name of it. It's completely development. Ugh. They fully go through the development area. They get all these cards and get them into their hand. So if any of those things happen, it ends the scoring phase. Development area fully realized. The King of Kings card is flipped over. I put these the wrong way. My apologies. So this is the King of Kings card. And what happens if you acquire this instead, you flip it over. So King of Kings card gets flipped over. You go all the way through the fame deck and you get to the King of Kings card and then you flip it over. You get through the main market deck. All cards are gone from the main market deck. Then you would go into the scoring phase, which means you finish that round that you're through, and then you go through one more full round all the way through to the Solstice again. This is your Solstice card. Oops, hit the camera. All right, now, where I kind of screwed up is if these cards run out, the unrest cards, there's no more of these cards, that is collapse. And what I said in the previous video was collapse, then you stop the game and you just count victory points. That is not true. Once a collapse occurs, you do stop the game. So collapse, no more cards here, no more unrest cards. Everyone stops in their tracks, and you sit and count who has the most unrest cards, right? Or how many unrest cards each person has. Whoever has the most obviously loses. The person with the least, let's say someone had 1 unrest card in their area, it would really be in their discard pile or their deck, they would win because they have the least unrest. Whoever has the most unrest loses. And that is if collapse happens. And collapse is when these cards disappear. And I'll probably run through it one more time later on. So let's get back into how you play this solo in the setup. So the setup for who you're playing, and over here on the right I set up who I was going to play. I'm going to play the Celts over here. So the setup is the same as you would do in a 2 to 4 player game, right? You have your power card, you set down your ascension card, you put your nation deck on top of here, you set up your development area over here, and then you set up, and the reason I have this like this is because I already drew my 5 cards. Then you set up your draw deck. And from the draw deck, you take 5 cards to start your hand, right? This is your hand would be these 5 cards. This is where I'd start with an unrest. Awesome. So this is how you set up for yourself. You set up the draw deck, you set up your power card, you set up your ascension card, then you put your nation deck face down, shuffled on top, and then you put up your development deck face up, because once you get to the point to the development deck, then you just pick whatever card you can pay for. How do you get to the development deck? If you hadn't watched before, is once you get this ascension card and it goes into your discard pile, your state card, this is your state card over here, flips over to Empire. Once the state card's at Empire, then you can get into your development deck. So you then also, for the setup, you put out your, I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth, you put out your 3 actions that you can take, your 5 exhaust. You get 3 material, 2 people, this is just like the 2 to 4, and 1 victory point. But instead it's just you. The bot doesn't get all that extra stuff. All right, so then we go over to the bot side. So this is the extra that happens that you don't do in a normal game. So the first thing, and I might do this slightly out of order, but the first thing I do is I put down these numbers, right? And you put them down, the first 4 columns, and they're ascending from left to right. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is a 6 that comes in the box. You don't put it down, but you put the 5 down, right? Then you take, well, you build this deck first. And what this deck consists of, and I'll just kind of tear it apart for you guys so you can see, is first you start with your development deck for whatever culture you're using, right? And we're using the Scythians over here. You put that face down, but you set the cards up where the highest number card is at the top. See, so there's 5 or 7, 3, 2, 2. And they tell you certain things in the setup. If you have the asterisk, that's 5. If you have a question mark, consider that the highest value card. So you take the card's values, which are down here in the lower right, and you set them up that way. So that the highest on top. So that's why we have 7, 3, 2, 2. So you get that development deck and you set it upside down, face down like that. Next, you go ahead and grab the Ascension card for your society. And all the cards are marked. They let you know what to put out, right? So this one has the little circle. You put that face up. That's your Ascension card. Then on top of your Ascension card, you put your Nation deck, your Nation cards. And they're marked with these crescent moons, right? And you go ahead and give them a shuffle, and you put those on top here, right? And then you set up all the cards that have no symbols, right? These become your initial draw deck. So for the bot, this is their initial draw deck. And you would shuffle them all up, and then you would set them out here. So just in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, all the cards see are like that. I didn't show you. See, these have no markings and stuff like that. So you're basically setting up the bot deck. Once you understand how to play the game, it's really easy to set this stuff up. It's just getting down the iconography, knowing what to put down, knowing what the pictures mean. Once you get that, it gets really simple. So, and oh, of course you get the state card, right? The bot gets a state card because they too will flip over to Empire, and that affects how things work. Now, how do you go through playing it? Now we've gone over the basic setup. Oh, and here's the power card. Whoopsie, the power card. How do you go through playing? The first thing I would say is remember that you do not read any of the text for bot cards. You don't pay attention to the text at all. You're paying attention to the iconography, and I'll show that here in a minute. So you don't want to read what it says on the card and try to do that for the bot. That's not how it works. So how the game works is, you put the Solstice card in between you. So first player is you, and then the idea is that it goes around and you still do Solstice, which means certain cards will say you can do X, Y, or Z during Solstice. Solstice is after everybody's taken a turn. So you put the Solstice card there to remind you. So your play goes the same way as anybody else's play. It's exactly the same. You take your 5 cards, right, and you decide what you want to do. You have those 3 options. You have Activate. In Activate, you can use your Activate tokens. You have 3 of them, or action tokens. You have 3 action tokens, which means you can play 3 cards, right? The cards allow you to do things like get cards from the market, of course, paying and stuff like that, and do other things. You can exhaust cards. So you have a play area over here, and there's certain cards that have an infinity mark. Let's see if we have one. They have that infinity mark. See up there? I'm pointing with the card, so it's hard to tell. They have that infinity mark. Those mean they can go down in your play area. It's hard for you guys to see how it's set up, but you could set them down in your play area. And to use these cards, you use exhaust tokens. So you can decide to activate, which means you can use 3 actions, or you can exhaust using your exhaust tokens to use cards that are already out, and activate is to put cards down or use cards. A lot of these cards, if they don't have that symbol right there, that infinity symbol, they're played and they go in your discard pile. So your turn goes exactly the same. You go through that. Once that's all done, you grab 5 more cards. I guess here I can show it really quick. So you go through a whole deck, you play things, whatever, and then you draw 5 more cards up, right? So you get your hand of 5 and you're ready to go. You take all your tokens that you put out and your exhaust or your action tokens, you put them back on your state card. And then if you have no cards, so we'll do this really quick. And this is exactly how you play 2 to 4. So if you have no cards here and you have to shuffle your discard deck, what you can do is you can take 1 card off your nation deck if there is not already an exhaust token on your nation deck. So in this case, what would happen is you would take 1 card from your nation deck, you would throw it in there, and then you would shuffle up. And we won't do it, but you shuffle it in, right? And then you draw your 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got your starting hand again. You got all your extra cards, and you're ready to go. And you put 1 exhaust on there. Now, one thing to remember is at the end of your turn, before you draw your cards up, you remove any exhaust. You take any exhausts and any action tokens that aren't on your state card, and you put them back on your state card. So how you get into this deck is just the same. If you remember what I said in the beginning, if you get through all your nation deck and you get your ascension card into your discard pile, this flips over, and I'll use this as an example because it's easy to kick in the tokens. This flips over to your state card, right? And your state card, right, allows you to get into this. And so anytime you would have to reshuffle your deck, you go ahead and look over here and you would pay the cost that it would take to buy one of these. Like this one, it says development cost 2 supply material and 2 people. 2 material, 2 people, right? So you would pay that, and that would go in your discard pile, and then you would have that to play later. That's only if it's blue. So you would have to have your state card at Empire, and to get it there, right, you have to get that ascension card first. So you go through your turn, and at the end of your turn, you pick one of your cards and you decide that you want to put a victory point on it. Say maybe you want that one. So you put down a victory point. Now, that's kind of a rerun of what happened before. Now we're going to get into how the bot works. And once you get down the iconography, like I said, it's really easy to figure out how the bot works. So with the bot, what you do is the first thing you do is you take this big chunky die, and if you watch the unboxing that I did, I said I didn't know what this die was for. Right? I have no idea. And I might have said it in the original how to play the 2 to 4 player version. But the die is for the bot. That's what the die is for. And you roll the die, it says 3. You put the die down on the 3 marker, and then you proceed to go through the cards. You flip them over one at a time, and you will play all the cards except for the one that the die's on. So I'll just show you guys really quick. So I flip it over. There's a chart. This is the reference guide. There's a chart, right? So you go through here and you go to the Scythians, and they're color coded too, which doesn't mean I'm going to find it any faster. There's the Scythians. So then you look at this chart that's in your solo mode pamphlet. So the solo mode rulebook. And you look at what your state card is. So the state card is in the barbarian state. And what you do is you look at the card in the first symbol that you find on this chart. And that's how it works. So let's get the card up here. It's going to be kind of hard to balance them both. So you take this card, right? And you look at the first symbol you can find. So you look across here. You see this card. And you go from top to bottom for symbols on the card. You go on here. You go down to the first symbol. You see barbarians down here. It tells you exactly what to do for the bot. This one, it says if there is 1 or more locations in play, that means you have them out in your play area for the bot, right? Gain 1 material per location in play, right? If you can't do that, otherwise, break through for a location. It means you get a location that goes in your discard pile, right? So you basically, instead of following, you don't read what the card says, you look at the chart. Once you've finished what that tells you to do, you set it down there, right? Once that's done, you go ahead and you go through every card for the bot. So you go through this one, you get another one of those symbols. But here's one of the things that I'll point out. If you see, this symbol has barbarian, right? Has that barbarian symbol, it's a good example. But when I start going down my chart, this symbol comes up first, which is the location symbol. So as I'm going down, barbarian, barbarian, oh, location, there's location on the card. So I would do this. Gain 1 person, play this location, exile a card from market. So let's talk about how you do the exile really quick. So how the bot does the exile is the bot will exile the lowest number card based on these numbers right here. So 1 is the lowest, but bots will not exile any card with a victory point. So then you would go to 2. So what this card is saying is that a bot is going to exile this card, which means it goes over here, it's out of the game for good. There are some cards that let you kind of mess with the exile pile, if I remember right. Then you would take a new card, you would look at it, and you would put it down, and because it's uncivilized, all uncivilized cards get an unrest, so you don't have to move the unrest. In the instructions, it says to take the unrest out, flip the card, then put unrest back if you need. I tend to leave the unrest card there, flip, look at the new card from the market. If I don't need unrest, I get rid of it. I do it reverse, it's kind of quick. So that's how the bot takes care of exiling cards. It's always the lowest number without, trying to remember how it says in the book. The lowest qualifying number, if it has any kind of points or materials or people on the card, it's not qualifying. So 2 is the lowest, 2 gets exiled. And then you just go through, you keep going through the cards. There we got the barbarian one, which we talked about. Once you've done a card, you put it in your discard pile. You got the barbarian one, which we talked about. You do what you're supposed to do for that one. You put it in here. Then you go to the last card. You flip it over, and there's an unrest card. I was hoping there was an unrest in there. I didn't set these up. I just randomly put them out. So the unrest card, just like for you, means nothing happens. The difference is the bot can't get rid of unrest cards. So they just clog their deck. I won a solo game with Vikings, just throwing unrest at the bot as much as I could until we collapsed, till the civilization collapsed. And then, of course, the bot had the most unrest cards. It was kind of fun. I felt very Viking. I was just giving them unrest. The Celts do a lot of that too, a lot of giving unrest to other civilizations. I mean, that's why I like those two groups. But anyways, so you go through the cards, you set them all down here until you've gone through all the cards. Now, what you do is you take this card, it slides all the way to the first position, right? And then you go over here to your bot deck and you put out 1 card for each open slot across the board, or however you want to look at it. Right, you put those cards down, and then you look at the number on the die, you take that spot here, and you put a victory point on it, like that, and then the bot turns over, then you go back to you, and then you get to do those things. You could do activation. I didn't go through all 3 of them. I'll do it really quick. You could do activation, which we talked about, action, exhaust. You can do, what's it called? Let me flip to a back of a book, and it's going to tell me. Innovate. I knew it started with an I. You can do an activate, you can innovate, which means you look at your deck of cards and you're like, I don't want any of these cards. You throw the deck down. That allows you to break through for any cards up here. That means you could take the card and whatever's on top of the card without taking the unrest card. That's what breakthrough means, and then it goes in your discard pile. So you can innovate to break through, or you can revolt. And what revolt is, and this will be a good example. So I have my 5 cards. I have an unrest. I want to get this unrest out of my hand. I can revolt. I can just go ahead and say, get rid of the entire hand, get rid of that unrest, and my turn's over. So you can activate, innovate, and revolt. Those are the 3 things you can do. So it goes round and round like that. You go, the bot goes, you go, the bot goes. But the one thing to remember is every time, this is a little bit, you guys get to see a little bit of my OCD, is every time after after the bot goes, there's the Solstice. So you would check for Solstice Conditions, and on the cards it'll say Solstice. So trying to get a card that's not, here, we'll just grab this one. Let's see, this one does not have a Solstice, but this gives you a whole bunch of stuff to do. This is the exhaust, where you put an exhaust token. Passive means that it's always going, but someone will say Solstice, and then it'll have the colon there, and it'll say what you can do. Once it hits Solstice, you check all your Solstice cards. There is a uncivilized one, I think it's called Mystic, where you get a free action, but at the Solstice, you either have to discard 2 cards from your hand or take an Unrest. It's kind of a wild mix-up, but that happens only at the Solstice. So once everybody goes, you go, bot goes, you check Solstice Conditions, no Solstice Conditions. They say check win conditions, but you'll know, or end game conditions, but you'll know that. And then you go again. Now, a couple of things that I want to add, and this is for the bot stuff. If you roll the die, and of course I'm not going to do it, I thought I almost did it, and you roll a 6, that means the 6 just stays there. The die does not go on any of the bot cards. And you play through the same way, you play through all the bot cards, and then it also means that no slot gets a victory point. Though we obviously know there's a 6th slot, it doesn't get a victory point. Now, a couple other things to understand. How the bot gets the King of King cards is it all depends on what card you flip over, right? What iconography. So let's see here. In this one, they don't get to touch any of the King of Kings, I don't think, for the Scythians. But if they flip their card over to Empire, once they get to Empire, if they get a Glory card, they can abandon 3 places and get a King of Kings card. So one thing I want to talk about with that one, with the King of Kings over here, let's go ahead and grab it. When playing, this is only when playing the bot, if the bot gets to the King of Kings card, that means all the fame cards on top are gone, and they get to draw a card from here. They get this King of Kings card. It tells you don't take the card. You trigger the end game, so you trigger the scoring, which means everybody gets to finish their round and one more round. But you resolve this first. So you get, if you're in Barbarian state, you get 6 victory. If you, the player, are in Empire state, you get 3 victory. The bot doesn't get these. Then it flips over and you play through. And once again, if you would draw a card from the Fame deck, you would actually get what it says on this card. So with the King of Kings card, even if the bot gets it, which happened to me the other night, I got those 6 points, not the bot. Kind of cheating, I guess, but it's kind of how it works. So that's how the bot gets the Fame cards and gets to the King of Kings card. The other thing that I want to point out really quick about the bot is that how the bot gets through this deck is whenever they're out of cards, right? They're all out. So let's take all these cards. They're all out of cards. Anytime the bot needs to shuffle their discard and start a new bot deck, anytime they need to do this, you take 1 card from here and you put it in here, and then you shuffle this up, right? And you shuffle it and you shuffle it, and then you put down your new cards. Even if you only need 1 card or 2 cards, you had to shuffle. A card comes from there. Now for the bots, so then you have this draw deck, a new draw deck. For the bots, once you get through all these are your nation cards. If you remember, I told you guys with the crescent moon, these are your nation cards. Once the bot gets through all those, and they get this card, and it goes into their discard pile, just the Ascension card, just like us, the bot will flip over to Empire, right? Once that, will go like this. Once that gets into their discard pile, right? The bot flips over to Empire. And then, when you get a card, right? Instead of looking at the Barbarians, you look at the Empire, and you see what the Empire does. So that's how the bot gets into Empire. And that's basically how you go through the game. Setup's normal, is the 2 to 4 player for yourself. There's certain rules for the bots. You set all this up as if it were 2 players, which means 6 cards, 6 cards, 6 cards. All the rest make up the market deck. And then you're ready to play. The end conditions are the same. You can start scoring, right? Like I said, that's when you lose all those cards. There's no more market cards. You flip over the King of Kings card. Either the bot or yourself finishes developing, so you get all your development cards into your deck. when any of that happens, and like I said, the Vikings are certain things, there's certain groups that have certain things, certain civilizations. But if any of those scoring end phase things happen, then you start the scoring phase, which means that you finish off that cycle. So if I started the scoring phase, the bot still gets one more turn. Then we go through the solstice and we play through all the way again. The other end condition that can happen, like I said in the beginning, was collapse. That means all those cards are gone. And then you see whoever, you just count and see, you stop right there and count, see who has the most unrest. And that solves the game. That's the end of the game. Whoever has the most unrest loses. Now, if you go into a scoring phase, so let's say I get through my development deck, the bot gets to go again, I get to go again one more time, and there's only one unrest card left there, and I'm able to give this unrest card to the bot somehow. I'm able to get rid of it. That means that the game instantly stops. Even if I had my turn, the bot should have their turn. Once again, whenever there's collapse, the game stops. Even if you're going through scoring phase and collapse happens, the game stops and you count who has the most unrest cards. And then if there's a tie, the tiebreaker is who has the most points, and then it goes on and on. Or who has the most victory points. Now, there are some differences in how you score for the bot, and the rule book tells you how to do it, right? There's a certain way that you score for yourself, and you score certain cards. The bot works a little different. So there's the scoring stuff for the bot that's in the solo guide. The other thing that I would say is there are a couple keywords that work different for the bot, right? So change to card effects, and it kind of tells you all this stuff in here. And the best thing, or the biggest thing to think of, one I already told you about. When a bot would exile, you go to the lowest number that's available, the lowest available number. If there's any victory points, it's not available. So you'd go down to 2, you'd instantly get rid of that card. If the bot gets to break through, the bot will break through whatever card is the highest value. And some of these cards have numbers. Let's see, this one has a 1 on it. This one has an asterisk, and for the bot, you consider that 5 points. And then this one has a question mark. And what they say is you take the highest point. So that one has 1. So if the bot were to break through, right, which means they don't have to take the unrest card, they would go with this one because it's 5 and it has 2 victory points on top. So this card's total worth is 7 points. So when a bot breaks through, they go for the highest value there. When a bot acquires, it usually tells you what kind of card to acquire. Once again, they will take the highest value. It'll say something like uncivilized or civilized card. They take the highest value card in there. If a bot is going to exile a card, it goes with the lowest number. Those are the main things to think about. And that is about it. That's how you play. There's obviously some more nuances. This is definitely a thinking game. It's weighted to medium to heavyweight deck building game. That's basically how you play the solo mode. I hope I explained it well for everybody and it was easy to understand. Once again, I'm Steven with Cardboard Coalition. See you later, everybody. Bye.